All right, so next we have Jacob Loewenstein here to present how NFT creators became the heart of the metaverse. Now, in a weird way, there's a lot of similarities between us, where we both went to grad school 1 year apart at MIT. We both somehow ended in the spatial industry. But anyways, yeah, Jacob, take it away.
I thought you were going to ask me a question.
So this was the thing I forgot to do, which is so I'm asking every person that comes on stage one question and recording the answer. And so the question is very simple. It is, in 20 words or less, how do you define the metaverse?
Okay. The metaverse is just like the internet, but more 3D and social. That's it.
I love it.
Was it less than 20 words? Can someone confirm in the crowd? I want to make sure I didn't break any rules. Okay, so I guess I'm like on the clock. I'm definitely gonna be the person that goes over time. So this is the first talk I've given in like 2 years where I'm not wearing basketball shorts and a button-down shirt. So thank you for returning me to normalcy here. Can I get a round of applause for wearing clothing? Yeah, what a weird feeling. I wanted to try out things that you can't do over Zoom because we're in person again. So I want to try 2 things. So one, I wanted to try like a little like call and return. I'm just like, I don't know, I want to activate the audience here. So if like, I'm going to say meta and then you say verse, and if you don't respond, I'm not going to start my talk. So when I say meta, you say verse. Meta, meta. I love this. Okay, you get a pair of socks. Bree gets a pair of socks. These are just things you can't do over Zoom. I just like everyone should get some really cool merch. I wanted to do like drops here. Yeah, this is like hot. This is the hot ticket item. Who wants socks? Lauren already got socks. She can't have another pair. If you already got socks, that's how I bring people closer. I don't know. I'm just having fun. Maybe I should actually start my talk, but we'll do. Sorry, Bree. Is there a clicker thingy, or is that? Guys, we're going to have to reset the clock. I think I need another 20 minutes. This is... Thank you. Okay, so this is kind of a weird situation because this is the collaboration track, I think, and yet here I am talking about experiencing instant social NFT galleries together. So for those of you that have ever used Spatial, you might sort of like be like, WTF, what is going on? What has Spatial become? How many more buzzwords can they throw into their title? And the answer is infinitely more buzzwords if it helps us make money. I'm just kidding. But I want to talk to you because we've changed our direction, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing now and why. So for those of you that don't know Spatial, I'm just going to do a little go backwards before go forwards. So really dope team. We were founded by Anand and Jinha. They're 2 super wonderful 3D interface designers. Anand sold his last company, BumpTop, to Google. It was kind of like the first touch interface where you interact with information with your hands, and then he was at Google for a while. Jinha was an MIT Media Lab PhD, ended up becoming the lead TV designer for Samsung. He built the world's first holographic computer. Oh, right, I have a laser pointer. So this is like true 90s corporate presentation here. If you look at our P&L, this is what they built. So really incredible inventors. And when they got together after Google and Samsung respectively, they founded Spatial. We have honestly the best head of business in the world. I just don't even know how we got him. Peter's a really incredible designer. He used to be a lead designer on Google Hangouts and then was a lead designer at Uber as well. Mike, who's basically like our CTO, incredible Google engineer. And then we have the pleasure of working with Jim Hackett, used to be CEO of Ford. Really cool guy, great ideas. That's us. So now when we started Spatial, and this video is muted, so you're not, there's a reason there's no audio. But when we started Spatial, the dream is that we really wanted to change how people work. So it was like pre-COVID, and we were in this situation where, we were talking to companies and they had these like pockets of people spread all over the world, and we wanted to figure out how we could help them work better together. So we built this system where people could make a photorealistic avatar from a selfie. They could join from any device, AR, VR, and then they could literally feel like they're in the room together. And so we launched this in 2018. Originally, we were AR only on the HoloLens 2, and then over time, we started, really trying to emphasize accessibility. So we, worked with Facebook, now Meta, to launch on the Quest 1 and then eventually the Quest 2. And obviously, being on a device that was only $300 made the availability of this type of experience much easier. And so that was really, really exciting. And we were doing all sorts of cool things in that space. You know, we were working with really big companies like Mattel and Pfizer and BNP Paribas and all these like big companies. And then basically like over time, it became very, very clear that like in the collaboration context, Spatial was mostly good for like 3 repeating use cases. So like people would use us for work meetings, people would use us, you know, so, oh, I want to put up sticky notes, like let's keep track of the deliverables. We just mostly want to sit around a table and have a conversation. Team events were pretty popular and a little bit unexpected. So people just felt like, oh, when we can't see each other in person, there's something really fun about having a sense of physical presence together in Spatial. And then 3D design review, which was sort of like the no-brainer. That's what we showed with Mattel when we launched the HoloLens 2 a bunch of years ago with Microsoft. That like if you could actually take something you're building in 3D and then share it in 3D and annotate it in 3D, like it's a much easier way to grok the information. But then some interesting things started to happen. So we launched on Quest 2. At that time, majority of our usage was in AR. And suddenly, like, things really shifted. So the first big shift that happened in 2020 was that 60% of our usage ended up moving over to VR, like specifically on the Quest 2. And we thought, okay, that's really interesting. Like, maybe the moment has arrived where, like, everyone is ready to put on a VR headset and be in a VR headset all day. And, like, this is it. Our dream from Spatial has finally happened. But then we started getting a lot of feedback where people said, hey, it's kind of hard to stay in a headset for a long time. It's still hard to set up. Honestly, we would love for this to work on platforms that we already have. Like the easiest thing in the world would just be, honestly, if we could just like click a link, just like we do with Zoom or Teams, and have this thing work. And we said, okay, we're going to try it. And so we launched a web and mobile version, and shit really got crazy. Because we went from being 60% in headset one year to going completely the opposite direction the next year. And now in 2021, 75% of our users don't use a headset at all, which I know I like shouldn't be saying at this conference above all conferences, like shout out to headsets. But I think that there's something like really profound here, which is if you think about the most popular quote unquote metaverses in the world today, right? You think about Roblox, you think about Minecraft, you know, you think of anything probably resembles a game. But the primary way that people access like so-called socially immersive 3D internet-based experiences today is by and large never in a headset. It's almost entirely on a desktop computer, sometimes on mobile. And that's really profound, right? Because like during this month, when the metaverse has never been more talked about ever, which should be the most exciting thing for like this community of people at this conference, what most people are experiencing, what they relate to, is actually not a headset-based experience at all. They're talking about some, you know, an entry point to the metaverse that's really just on devices they already had. And not only did our usage shift all the way over to web and mobile, this other really weird thing started to happen. So this was like January of 2021. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Spatial, right, it's like a no-code tool where anyone can just like create a custom environment, you know, immediately meet with people, host an event really easily. And this artist named Elyx, E-L-Y-X, wanted to do an exhibition with the UN. So he's a UN ambassador and was like looking for a way to build a gallery. And we, you know, had discovered Spatial, like kind of showed him how to do it. And he just figured it out. He like built this like really, really dope custom 3D environment and like put up all his pieces, and like people from the UN General Assembly were just coming through here and enjoying it. And at that time, we didn't think much of it. We sort of were just like, okay, this is like a cool, interesting use of a tool that is broadly applicable to a lot of stuff. Like, we'll keep note of that in the back of our minds and move over. And then a little bit later, and now this is like in March, we started seeing some tweets. On the left is Harlan Perez, a really super talented 3D NFT artist. On the right is Federico Clapis, who's a pretty famous sculpture artist. And without us ever talking to them, they discovered Spatial, and they started building galleries and ateliers for their NFT art in Spatial. And we're like, I don't really understand that. So, you know, like any good startup does, we like went and we interviewed our users. And the funny thing is, if you look at Federico's environment here, this is actually our boardroom environment. Like, we designed this for like people to literally like have board meetings and sit down, and he appropriated it, I use that in like the good way, to be a gallery. And so he was basically taking a tool that we built for one thing and using it for something totally different. This is an abstract environment we have for people that want to build full immersive environments, and Harlan is bringing his 3D NFTs into it. And we started asking them, we're like, what the hell? Like, why do you want to bring this stuff into Spatial? It's awesome, but like, what are you getting out of this? And what they both explained to us is that there's a really interesting issue right now. So I don't know how many people, raise your hand if you know what an NFT is. Raise your hand if you own an NFT. Okay, a little bit of a conservative audience here. Get into the frenzy. But basically, like, essentially, people are selling digital art that can finally be certified as unique. But the experience around how people, to use the word again, experience the art is totally broken right now. Like, you basically put a JPEG up on like an old web page, or you put like a 3D model up on a web page, and that's it. And if you think about how art is traditionally sold, there's actually a lot of attention paid to like an experience cultivated around this. Like, people have exhibitions, it's curated at a museum or at an auction house, the artist will talk about the piece. There's a whole rigmarole that goes into how you try and, get someone to understand the deep meaning of this beautiful piece of creativity that you put together. And that wasn't happening, and they found that in our metaverse, in Spatial, they could actually start building really beautiful experiences around their NFT art. And so that basically was the beginning of something pretty wild. And so those were like the first two proof points. But basically, since March, we have seen just this insane growth where now like 90% of our users are like NFT artists, creators, and collectors hosting exhibitions. And basically, no one is using Spatial for meetings anymore. And no one is using us on the enterprise side, which would have been a pretty crazy thing to say at the beginning of January, but it was just, there's, I think an axiomatic thing in startup land, which is like you follow your users, and this is where users led us. So Spatial went from being what we would call like the metaverse for collaboration to today what I like to kind of call it is the metaverse for culture, a place for people where they can go to have these sort of really enriching experiences where they feel like there's some sort of intellectual enlightenment they're going to have by way of experiencing art or a lecture or something similar. And so it's pretty wild. Literally, like with one click, you could integrate your Ethereum wallet, your MetaMask wallet. You can pull in the NFTs that you own, and you could use one of our many environments. We have a literal gallery environment to go and set up your gallery. It pulls in all the metadata. So for example, if you wrote up like an explanation about this piece of art, it pulls in that metadata. If you want to go and click out to then go and buy the piece on like OpenSea or SuperRare or something like that, you can click out to it in web. And this is primarily being experienced on web. And it's taken off. It's become super duper popular. So I'll show you some examples, but it's just been wild that when you take away the friction around headsets and just allow people to experience this in web, it's amazing that when a community finds product market fit, how quickly they actually take to the metaverse when it provides true value. And I just want to quickly run through a couple of examples of how folks in the NFT world have been using Spatial. So for example, the Utah Jazz, they had a really interesting case. They built an entire 3D locker room. Shout out to M2 Studios, who's a really awesome partner that we work with. They created a 3D locker room, and they sold NFTs to fans of the Utah Jazz. And then basically those that held the NFT, the token, used it as a ticket to gain access to this so they could hang out with players in like a real life player hangout. And so the first one was conducted a couple of weeks ago. It was pretty wild. And so it's just things have been starting to really like pick up in this world. Another really wonderful use case, we work with Krista Kim, an incredibly talented artist. She sold a NFT called Mars House. And when she sold it, the only way to experience it was as this like video that kind of gave you like a little bit of an overview of what the house was. But then the collector of the piece was like, well, I want to be in Mars House. I want to host events in Mars House. Like I want this space to actually have utility in the metaverse. This sold for $500,000, and you couldn't even get in it before it was in Spatial. And so she loaded it up into Spatial, and now she basically hosts events with her collectors in Mars House as this like beautiful ethereal space where people can come to just sort of like escape and feel chill and build community in. And so all these NFTs, which again, like previously people bought, maybe it was kind of like a financially speculative thing, have this whole new utility in the metaverse where you can actually touch them, experience them, even like be in them in the case of a space. And that's the possibility that Krista showed us. Harlan Perez, who I mentioned earlier, was that amazing artist. He did something really amazing. He built a rotating gallery. So this is called Arc Novo, and essentially every month he curates like a whole new show with just artists that he loves, NFT artists, and he brings them in and they just show all their pieces, and he'll even rent out this space if people want it. So like the whole idea of like real estate and galleries has been completely upended in the metaverse, because like not only can you build a space like Krista did and sell that space if you want as an NFT, there's like an Airbnb aspect to this where artists are basically building spaces, putting them into Spatial, and then renting them to other artists that want to have like an insanely dope gallery for people to experience their art in. So Harlan pioneered that in Spatial. And then people get like really clever with some of the formatting. Like not everything needs to be just sort of, piece on the wall. Like Meng Fu created this like really abstract experience for his art where, you know, the pieces were different sizes and all over the place. So you could even go beyond what like a traditional gallery structure is, and you can start to actually play with form and make the gallery itself like an interesting, weird piece of abstract art, which he did. And so now there's just like a really cool way that you can experience his works within Spatial. These people are not coders. It's a no-code platform. All they did was just like load up 3D models, drag and drop, position them the way they want it, scale the way they want it, and you can do it all in their web browser. And then the last example I want to talk about here is Illmind. So Illmind is a basically Grammy-winning producer. He's worked with Drake, worked with a couple of really, really cool people. And Illmind basically like mentors young producers. And during COVID, it was really, really hard to keep mentoring young producers. And so he made an environment as an NFT. And then he started doing kind of what the Jazz did. So he sells like tickets to sort of people that want to come and like be like tutored and mentored in production in Spatial in what he calls his Blap house. And then he has Blap sessions. And then he hosts this like every couple of weeks in Spatial. He's hosting events in here in his house to, you know, teach young producers how to produce music. So I think the two main takeaways is like there's something really profound that's happening here in the metaverse when you play around with concepts of you know, rareness, like unique ownership and scarcity, and also access, where suddenly things take on a whole new value in the metaverse, whereas before it wasn't really clear like what the value of these objects were. So creators are really the heart of our metaverse. It's the title of the talk, but from now on, like that is the mantra of Spatial. And it's because creators are early adopters and they're just highly vocal supporters of Spatial, right? So we work with OpenSea, we work with Super Rare, they rep us super hard, they're incredible partners. And like the outcome of this and why it's so amazing to work with creators is because it's like if you're building a neighborhood, you want those like first people who move in to like make the neighborhood dope and then rep it and then like talk about it. And that's what they're doing. Like literally, so this was April before like any NFT creators had really come to the platform. We were getting like 231 impressions to our Twitter, and now this is August, and we've 7x the number of impressions without putting any money into advertising on Twitter, right? So it's like, if you're talking about how do you really like create a metaverse where people are actively participating and taking notice, like creators are an incredible anchor community and an incredible community that spreads the word to build your metaverse around. And if you're asking yourself, like, what's the deal? Like, why do they like this? It's because we solve real problems. Like I talked about this before, right? Like if you went to OpenSea, this is how, I mean, we love OpenSea, right? They work with us, but like this is how you experience an NFT on the website, right? And so your only other alternative is you can jump in another platform, but then you're basically in this like Windows 95 screensaver type experience, and a lot of artists who are really trying to create a premium experience are like, this isn't good enough. So Spatial's so much better, right? You have this premium, easy to create, beautiful experience, and it's all super easy to do. And so I'm gonna roll out, I'm going to end, I promise. I'm going a little over time. But I'm going to end super quickly just by answering, I think, some questions that I think are important. So why NFTs? Like, why does all this matter? Beyond the fact that, like, buzzwords raise our valuation. Number one, with NFTs, creators are back in control, right? So the idea here is that with an NFT, right, anyone can mint it. They don't need any sort of middle person to go and facilitate that transaction. Everything can be programmed into a smart contract, and then you could sell it directly to someone else. So artists have full control, and they're taking back all of this money, percentages that would previously be taken by intermediaries. It's going back to the creator. Consequently, with NFTs, creators are getting paid, right? Like if you look online right now, the number of people that are able to quit their jobs and literally like live a fulfilling, sustainable life because they're selling their creativity and NFTs is profound. And it's not just anecdotal, right? Like if you look at the volume on OpenSea, it's going through the roof. And it's not just all the really expensive pieces. There's this long tail of NFTs that people are selling that's really allowing artists to build their livelihoods for the first time without having to work through intermediaries. And where Spatial really comes into the mix is that like you could see something like Christie's selling this art block squiggle for $4 million, but ask yourself, like, how do other people drive sales if they don't have like a Christie's and stuff that he's working for them? And that's what Spatial does, right? We give them access, we give them an opportunity to monetize and create this experience. And I just want you to listen to Tyrone for 1 second.
Being the first person to sell an NFT in Spatial, that was a real milestone for not only Spatial, but for myself, because it was proof that what I thought could be done could be done. Now I'm at the point where I've sold 27 NFTs total, 12 of which were actually because somebody clicked on it in the gallery. You've given me the ability to say, I have a global art gallery open every day of the year, all year. And for that, I'm extremely thankful. And all I want to do is pass that on to other artists. I did a class on Sunday for 15 artists on how to get their wallet, get an OpenSea account, and set up in Spatial. every single artist out there is the opportunity to pull themselves out of the gallery game and be the master of their own destiny. And
Boom. I love that. Be the master of their own destiny. We had NFT NYC in New York last week, and that totally cemented it. I'm like over time. I'm gonna get like yanked off with a hook. But so like, if you had any doubt that this was happening, this was like front page of New York Times. I mean, in Spatial last week, we had people coming into our office to experience Spatial. We created a digital twin of our office that's free. You're sitting in the front row. Curated all the art that was in our office. People could access it in the metaverse, and the response was insane. People were jumping into Spatial's office in the metaverse just to experience this art and have a tour of it. So, what's coming soon? I'm making one last announcement. I know you give me an inch, I take a mile. But in December, we have one-click auto gallery setup launching, so you don't even have to curate your gallery. It'll just pull whatever is in your wallet and set it up. And then we're launching the first one of one. It's going live on Super Rare next week, Rare Environment, where you can buy it and you'll be the only person in the world that has it. And I'm going to show this video, and then I'm going to dive off stage into the crowd. Yeah. So this is on sale on auction starting next week on Super Rare. Check it out. I think it's going to be really amazing. I probably run through my time for questions, so I'm just going to hang out outside. You could tell me how stupid you think this all is, or if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer them. But thank you, and thank you to Michael again for the dope introduction.
Of course.
Thank you very much. And we have more socks to give out. Infinite socks.
Yeah. So no time for questions, unfortunately, but yeah, be available after. And I think it's just a beautiful illustration of listening to your customer and pivoting, but how really listening can lead to these opportunities that you would never expect. I think if a few years ago, if you had said like, that was your business plan, I'd be like, all right, cool, like good luck with that. But it's amazing how these trends have really come to the head, and I think this intersection right here is fascinating. So thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, y'all. And there are a lot of good talks coming up.
All right. So we just have a
Really hard
5-minute
to throw
break
those.
here.